Hey there, friend. Welcome back to another episode of Artworks for Teachers. I'm your host, Susan Riley. And, today when we're releasing this podcast, it's about 2 days before New Year's Eve. And what comes on New Year's Eve? Resolutions, right? Now, I'm not a big believer in New Year's resolutions. I have tried New Year's resolutions. They don't work for me. I've also found years where I've tried using just a New Year's word, picking one word that's going to be my word for the year. And that's okay too. But what I actually find is the most helpful for me at this time of year is to work on my goal setting and setting goals that I really want to accomplish for the year ahead and thinking about where that's going to take me and who I'm going to have to become in order to meet those goals. That's really exciting for me. And so today I want to share with you journaling ideas that you can use for setting and reaching your goals, because it's not enough to just set them. That's where many of us fall short with our resolutions. We also have to reach them, right, in order to make a difference, to make a change. So, the reason I got started on this kick, though, was that I actually started with a goal 5 years ago that totally flopped. So 5 years ago, I set the goal for myself to read 100 books in a year because I thought, wow, that would be great. If I could read 100 books in a year, that would be amazing. I knew a lot of people who were that were my friends who were on like this book reading kick. Many of them were in book clubs. And so I was like, well, if I could get 100 books in, I could learn so much information in that period of time. So I could do 100 books a year. And then when it took me a month, the entire month of January to get through one book, I just collapsed, right? Like there was no way that I was going to hit my goal at this point, right? Because I've only gotten through one book in a month and I needed to do 99 more. There was just no way. And so I let that goal go, and it was kind of disappointing for me, right? It wasn't a big deal, but at the same time, I kind of felt disappointed in myself, right? Well, last year I came back to this goal and I decided that I wanted to tackle it again, but this time with a very specific plan for getting it done. So how did it turn out? Well, I'm going to come back to that in a minute. But first, I want to talk about the idea of goals themselves. So setting goals, just in research, when I'm going through the research and talking about goal setting, why do we go gaga for goals, right? Like, why do we want to set goals for ourselves? Because goals are linked with higher motivation, self-esteem, self-confidence, and autonomy, all the things that we want, right? Also, I think when you set a good goal for yourself and you've achieved it, there's this sense of just empowerment that you give yourself, right? And we've all had that where we've set a goal and we've reached it and we've had those moments of empowerment. We've all also had those experiences where we set a goal, we don't reach it, and then, we don't feel so great about ourselves, like in my book example, right? So with that understanding, it's also important to know that not all goals that we set for ourselves are beneficial. Goals need to be both external and internal in order for them to be significant and to be something that we can achieve. And in fact, not only do they need to be external and internal, those two things should be linked, right? So when we're thinking about goals, the external goal for me was, I want to read 100 books in a year. That's the external goal, right? Most times my goal for the new year is I want to lose 50 pounds in a year. That's usually my goal, if we're really honest, right? That's my external goal. The internal goal is the motivation of why you want to achieve that goal. And that's the thing most of us miss. And it's not just enough to identify the internal goal. We then have to link the why to the what. We have to link them together through, you're going to know this, through the how, right? And so the way that we do that, the how, is through shorter micro goals that ensure our progress over time. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to show you a graphic here. I'm going to share my screen in just a moment and share a graphic with you that I think is going to explain this so well. Now, if you're not on YouTube with me, if you're just listening, I'm going to try to describe this really well. But if you want to come back to go to episode 16 of the Artworks podcast on the website, and you'll be able to watch the video and see what I'm talking about. So in this graphic, hopefully you're able to see this right now, there is a pyramid. Okay, and it's a pyramid, and on the outside of the pyramid is a circle. So the pyramid is in the center, and then there's a circle around it. So the top part of your pyramid is the external goal: lose 40 pounds in a year. And then underneath of that top part of the pyramid, you've got two sections of the middle part of the pyramid. And so those are specific goals on how you're going to achieve that first external goal. So you're going to exercise 3 times a week and eat 1,500 calories a day. Very specific goals that will help you meet your external goal. And then underneath of those specific goals of exercise 3 times a week and eat 1,500 calories, well, you're going to break those down into 2 micro goals for each section. So for exercise 3 times a week, you're going to join a gym. And you're going to find 2 workout buddies, right? Those are 2 ways that you're going to support foundationally that specific goal for exercising 3 times a week. And underneath of eating 1,500 calories a day, you're going to buy a food scale, and you're going to learn how to cook 10 healthy recipes. Those 2 foundational micro goals are going to support the specific goal that you set, right? Which all of those together is going to be able to support you in losing your 40 pounds in 1 year. So that's all external. Those are all things that we can do. Now, on the circle on the outside, those are our general goals that are internally motivated. So the reasons that we want to do this are to have a healthy lifestyle, to have positive body self-image, and to have more energy and stamina. Those are internal goals, and these are our external goals. And together, they link them together in order to produce the outcome that we wanted. Okay, so having both internal and external goals is really important. This is all scientifically backed research on why that is. All right, so I'm going to come back to you now, just video face to face at this point. So knowing that, that's part 1 of how to find or create goals that actually matter. The next key ingredient is to setting and reaching goals is the understanding of measuring ourselves in the gain and not the gap. Now, I talked about this in episode 11 of this podcast. So if you want a refresher on the gain and the gap, or the book, The Gap and the Gain, actually from Dan Sullivan, go ahead and listen to that episode. But essentially, in that book, they share that goals are often a moving horizon. This is the trouble for all of us type A people, because we set goals that are forward reaching, right? And they're ambitious. And then we get close to them. But when we get close to them, we add something to it. And so the horizon is constantly moving. So it can be really hard to reach the finish line if your goal is always being added to or always moving just a little further, right? So rather than measuring from the start to the finish, Dan Sullivan's idea is that you measure backwards. You measure your progress backwards. So instead of measuring from the starting line to the finish, we need to measure from where we are to where we started. So where we are may or may not be at the goal we originally set, but it sure as heck beyond where we started, right? So let's go back to that original goal of let's lose 40 pounds that we just used. If your goal is to lose 40 pounds and you started where you had no weight loss whatsoever, and you're on week 3 and you've lost 4 pounds, you've not lost 40, so you've not met your goal, but you are measuring your progress backwards because you are now 4 pounds lighter than you were when you started. That feels a whole lot better than just saying I haven't met my goal yet, right? So we're constantly measuring our progress from where we are versus where we started. And when we shift our mindset in this direction, it does a couple of things for us. One, it offers us progress so that we can see progress. Therefore, we stay motivated and we keep going. And it also shows us purpose. It connects back to the why. Why am I doing this? Because all of these other internal reasons, and you list them out, right? And so when we do that, we have purpose, we have progress, and when we combine those, we can't help but also have gratitude, which is a hugely motivating component to keeping on with our goals and making sure that we meet them. And also, we know based on research that gratitude is a powerful mind tool that allows us to stay positive, to avoid burnout, to reduce stress, all of these amazing things that happen when we are in a state of gratitude. So by simply measuring our progress backwards towards our goals, we can incorporate that sense of gratitude and progress and purpose into what it is that we're trying to do. Okay, so finally, when it comes to goal setting itself, I always leave a little room for magic. I learned that from one of my mentors, James Wedmore, who always said, just like he would set a revenue goal for himself in terms of as an entrepreneur, what he was going to meet, and squeak out just like a little bit of extra for magic. And it almost always happens. I know that in the practice for myself, whenever I set a goal, I always leave a little room for magic because there's just some things you can't anticipate. And if your goals are so tightly focused, you're going to miss opportunities for that magic to happen. And so I'm going to show you in a minute how I leave space for that in my journaling practice and in terms of my goal setting, because I think you're going to see, oh, that's an interesting way of leaving room for magic. Everybody has their own practice for that, but I always just like to say, leave a little space because you never know what good is coming your way. Now that we've talked about this, all of these ideas that I've just talked about help you to refine and set your goals. But how do you know what helps you to reach those goals, right? So you've set them. We've worked on how to set a good goal, having an internal, external goal and linking them together. We've talked about looking at our progress in a way that builds in gratitude into that goal setting process. Okay. Now we know how to set those goals, but how do we reach them, right? Well, one way to do that is through writing them down and consistent follow through. Those are the two big areas that if I were to suggest, how do you make sure that you reach the goals that you actually set for yourselves? Those are the two things that matter the most. Write them down and follow through with them consistently. Consistency will beat out talent. It will beat out resources. It will beat out luck any day of the week. Being consistent is boring, but it also gives you progress. It gives you the thing that you're looking for. And writing things down, and psychologists will tell you this. If you have ever gone to a therapist, many of them will tell you, get a journal, right? Because when you write, the process of taking it from your mind to paper, to physically writing something down is really, really powerful. One, it takes it out of your mind and it puts it on paper so that you can read it and you can look at it again and again and again. Also, the practice of writing itself is scientifically proven to help you actually reach your goals faster. So write them down and work on them consistently. Now, there's a lot of ways that you can write them down in a journal, right? And I'm talking today about how to journal to set and reach your goals. So clearly, when we're writing them down, there's a lot of different ways to do that. I'm going to, in today's freebie, there's going to be a list of all the different ways that you can journal that are effective and what they are. How do we then incorporate that journaling into our daily life? That's the tricky part, right? So I have a way to do that. I'm going to show it to you here in a minute. So here's a couple of different ways that you can journal effectively, things that have been proven over time. One is to free write. Free writing is when you're just writing down anything that comes to mind. It's just getting the junk out of your head, right? So sometimes people do this in the morning when they're fresh. Sometimes people do it at night after a long day and they got to get stuff out. So that's free writing. Bullet journaling is when you are combining your schedule, your tasks, and organization into your actual journal. So you're writing all of that down in a journal rather than in a typical planner. Gratitude journals are when you sit down and you're writing down 3 things that you're grateful for that day. And sometimes your gratitude journal is also combined with a free write or with your bullet journaling. But being able to identify things that you're grateful for is another great way to journal. A reflection journal, things that you're learning after a long day or after a project, is another great way. Creative scrapbooking. This happens a lot with art journals. So if you're looking for a way to creatively express yourself and you love to doodle and draw, that might be an avenue you look for. And another one is called the worst case scenario journal. I actually ended up using this for a period of time when I was really struggling with some depression issues that I had going on. I would sit down and I would write out the worst case scenario. Like, what would be the absolute worst thing that could happen to me in this particular issue? And then I would look at it, and once it's down on paper, it doesn't look so bad. And it also is like, is that really likely to happen? And the answer is usually no. So it helps sometimes, especially if you're someone who is very anxious or worries a lot, to write down a worst case scenario journal. Any of these methods will help you get to your goal setting. You can layer your goal setting into your journaling practice and make both more effective. So to get started with goal setting and using and combining it with a journal, you have to figure out what you really want this year. Now, that is one of the most difficult questions that you could be asked. What do you really want? And so for me to do that, to be able to figure out what do I really want so I can set a goal for it this year, that's where the journaling comes in. And I have found a 4-step journaling prompts to be really effective. So there's 4 prompts, 4 steps that I go through in order to get to the heart of it. The first one is, what did I do, create, or experience this year that I'm really, really proud of? That's the first prompt. And then I'm going to free write about that into my journal. So, and if you think that there is not a single thing that you could be proud of this year, I promise you that there is. Pull out your phone, look at your photos, your social media feeds, something. I promise you there is something that you've done this year that you are really, really proud of. And so once you have that, write it down. Write exactly what it is, what that feeling is. Try to capture that feeling, what you're really proud of, because we have to take time to acknowledge how far we've come. There's that gap and gain thing, right? We're going to start with the gain. Where are we ending up right now versus where we started? What can we be really proud of? Then number 2, what mistakes did I make that taught me something this year? Or what lessons can I learn from that mistake? I am a full believer that you never fail unless you stop. You fail when you give up. Outside of that, you don't fail, you learn, right? So what was it that you learned this year? What was a mistake or something that was hard to go through that taught you a really valuable lesson? And what was that lesson? Write that down next, okay? Because now you have your wins and you have what you're learning is. Next part. This is a really powerful question. Now that you have those things in front of you, what are you now willing to let go of? This is a really powerful and personal question, but it's something that if you really think through it and you're honest with yourself, and again, who's going to look at your journal other than you, right? Let yourself think through this question. What am I willing to let go of? Are you willing to let go of overwhelm? That was something that I had last year. I had to write, I'm willing to let go of overwhelm. And by that, I mean, I don't do overwhelm anymore. When I get to the point where my brain's like, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed, I literally have a mantra that I tell myself. This is, you don't do overwhelm. So what will you now let go of so that you don't do overwhelm? Right? So again, these questions are going to bring some things up for you that are going to be personal, but it's going to help you so much to get into the goal that you really want to achieve this year and then meet that goal. So what are you now willing to let go of? Are you willing to let go of working late after school? Are you willing to let go of feeling guilty for missing a meeting? Are you willing to let go of feeling like you have to go to school every day, even if you're sick? What is it that you're willing to let go of this year? And then step number 4, who do I want to become? Now that you know what you're really proud of, what lessons you've gotten this year, what you're willing to let go of, all of that will then lead you to this answer of who do I want to become, right? I want to become someone who blank. I want to become a leader. I want to become healthy. I want to become, and all of these things. What does that mean, right? Because you don't get what you want before you are that person, right? It's not work hard, get what you want, and then become that person, right? Rich people, like let's just use money for an example. If you want a lot of money, right? You don't work hard, get a lot of money, and then become rich. Nope. You become rich first, which means you have the mindset of someone who is wealthy. And you then make decisions based in that mindset, which then leads you to actually becoming wealthy. That's how it actually works. So when you get to that question of who do I want to become, this is then going to lead you to know what goals you need to set for yourself. Because from there, you'll have a lot to work with when it comes to your goals. Who you want to become will dictate who you need to, what you need to do and who you need to be in order to get there. Okay. Those are your goals. Now, here's how all of this played out for me. Remember the 100 books that I wanted to read, and then remember how I originally abandoned it? Well, last year, when I answered these 4 questions in my journal, I decided that I wanted to become a reader. And I had actually originally forgotten about the 100 books goal. But when I dug into this, I realized I wanted to become a reader. Why? Because I have a strong belief that readers are leaders, as corny as that sounds. And I am a leader of our organization. And so I also want to be a reader. And so now I've tied that goal with an internal and an external component. Remember we talked about that? So now I know it's a good goal. So from there, I needed to break it down into manageable chunks. So that pyramid that we talked about. So how am I going to get there, right? How many books am I going to need to read each month in order to meet that goal of 100 by the end of the year? I need to read 8 books a month or 2 books a week to make my goal. And then opening up my mindset to the idea that reading can take on lots of different forms, right? So I thought about how can I incorporate audiobooks into this process? Because that's a form of reading. And I also had a goal to work out on my Peloton every day, 20 minutes a day. So if I combined those two, you know, I'm all about layering. If we can do it, right? Batching. If I can layer these 2 goals together, I can accomplish more. Right. And so I even carved out space for that goal in my planner. Like in my planner, I put a little space for what book am I reading this week so that I could kind of keep track of where I was. And now at the time of this recording, I am now on book 102, Mad Honey from Jodi Picoult. So I'm really excited. I've got there, right? But it's because I've done the work, the goal work that we talked about here. And I also put it down in writing and I'm working on it consistently. Now, if you're like me, you like a good process. And so far we've talked about what good goals look like, how to measure your progress, a 4-step process to finding the right goals for you, and even how to layer journaling and goal setting together. Now for this last part, I want to show you a few examples of how I do that in real life. So the first part that I'm going to suggest to you is to get a really nice, pretty journal. Just something that's not huge, just a small little journal. I like to have a nice leather-bound journal that has a place for me to be able to bookmark my spots. But you'll see in here that in this book, in this journal, it's literally all I leave is space for free writing, okay? And different ideas that come into my mind. I keep it next to my bed at night because I wake up at 3 a.m. and have 1,000 ideas, and I just write them down. Okay, this is what I want you to use for free writing, right? Is a journal like this. So I I would just start with getting a really pretty journal, get some pens that you love, because again, we want to be consistent. So you don't want something that's going to hinder you in any way. You want something that you're going to love to open up, to write with. Keep in mind, these are simple ideas, but they work wonders. So you start with that. And then the other thing I would recommend is to either buy a planner or create a planner that connects and combines some of these ideas that I shared today into one area. And that's what I did. So this is my planner. And I made this at home. So like I have a laminator. I love my laminator. I laminated the front cover and the back cover. I also created some tabs that have the months and the dates and everything on it, and each section that I'm going to use this planner for. And I've bound it with just a regular spiral bounding. Now, that in itself is not super important. In this planner, I have, budgets and spaces for me to work on projects. But what I really love and what I think is helpful is this format right here. And I'm hoping if you are watching this, you can see it. And I'm going to describe it for those of you who are not watching it. Okay. On my planning sheet, on my weekly planning sheet, I have the week of, and then of course I have the days that run down the side. But then this is what I've built in for myself. I have a to-do list for me on the right-hand side or the left-hand side of the page. I have a to-do list for me, and I have a to-do list for the universe. So there are some things that, remember that make room for magic? There are some things that I need to let go of that I have no control over, but I'm going to let the universe take care of that for me. When I do this exercise on Sunday nights, I find that helps me relax a lot for my week. I can handle the things that I can handle. And the things that I'm worried about that also need to get done, but that I have no control over, that goes into the universe's to-do list. And I'm just going to trust that that's going to happen the best way it can on that universe to-do list. And that gives me some peace of mind. Next, I have this space down here, which is interesting. It's called the CTFAR space. So I work through a frame of mind called the CTFAR exercise, which is circumstance leads to thinking, leads to your feelings, leads to your actions, leads to your results. CTAFR or CTFAR. And so whenever I get stuck and I'm kind of mulling around about an idea, I go to this framework, and this is my space for that in my journal. And if something's happening and I'm feeling really crappy about it, I'm going to write down my thought around whatever it is that's causing me to feel that way, right? Like if I'm really frustrated, that's my feeling. I'm frustrated. It's because I'm thinking something that's making me frustrated. What's that thought? Well, I'm thinking that this person didn't do the work that I assigned them to do. And the circumstance for that thought is that an assignment was turned in late for one of my team members. Okay. So there, I've back mapped into that circumstance, thinking, feeling, and then what action have I already taken and what result has come out of that action. Then I do another one and I change the thought so that I can change the feeling. The circumstance stays the same. So the circumstance was that somebody turned in an assignment late. Now my thought was, okay, what do we need to do in order to get that assignment or whatever that work was done? My feeling is different. It's not frustrated. Now it's purposeful. My action is to actually do it. And then my result is that the thing actually gets done. So when I have that kind of a framework that helps me to accomplish some things, that helps me get out of a rut, I put that into my planner as well. And then at the top, I have space for me. I have a Bible verse at the top that helps me to consider God's word. If some people don't need that, that's not something that they subscribe to, which is fine. In that area, that's where I would put either one of your goals, something that you're working towards, or a progress that you're having towards that goal that week, so that you are constantly and consistently writing down the goals that you have in order to move forward. So whether or not it's in a planner like this, or it's in a small journal like this, does not matter. What matters is that you're writing it down and you're being consistent and you're working in the process that we talked about today in order to set goals that are meaningful and that you can actually accomplish. So that's it, a down and dirty guide for setting and reaching your goals this year. If any of this was helpful for you and you start using it, I would love to see what you're doing. Tag me on social media. It's at artsint.edu so that I can celebrate you and cheer you on in helping to meet your goals for the upcoming year. And if you know somebody that could really use this particular episode to help them with their goals, I would be so honored if you would share it with them. Now, next week, we are kicking off the new year with a new set of interviews. Throughout the month of January, we're going to be highlighting our Arts Integration Certification alumni, talking with each of them about what they're up to now and what they learned from the program and how it's helping them now in anticipation of our February 1st enrollment kickoff. So next Thursday, you're going to hear from Molly Lucarelli about her life after the classroom. She actually left the classroom and she's doing some amazing work right now. So you're going to get to hear all about that next Thursday. So until then, stay creative, my friend, and take care.